The world of professional wrestling is as much about the personalities behind the scenes as it is about the drama in the ring. Few wrestlers embodied intensity and unpredictability quite like the Ultimate Warrior. With his wild energy, iconic face paint, and relentless passion, Warrior became a symbol of raw power and emotion in the wrestling world. But that same fiery spirit sometimes led to friction with his peers. Wrestling locker rooms are a melting pot of egos, philosophies, and styles, and it's no surprise that clashes happen, especially when strong personalities like Warriors collide with others who have very different approaches. Over the years, the Ultimate Warrior reportedly had tense relationships with several top stars of different eras, including legends like Ric Flair, Bill Goldberg, Kane, Kurt Angle, Triple H, and The Rock. These backstage tensions weren't just about personal dislike. They reflected deeper differences in how these men viewed wrestling, professionalism, and what it took to succeed. Exploring these relationships gives us a unique glimpse into the evolving world of wrestling, where old-school rebellion often met new-school polish, and where the battle for respect and legacy extended far beyond the squared circle. 1. Ric Flair, age 76. The Nature Boy's legacy versus Warrior's wild spirit. Ric Flair, now 76, is often regarded as one of wrestling's greatest icons. Known as the Nature Boy, Flair's career is nothing short of legendary, spanning over 4 decades, filled with countless championship wins, unforgettable promos, and a personality that's larger than life. Flair is the epitome of old-school wrestling. He mastered the art of storytelling, weaving intricate narratives both inside and outside the ring, and taught generations what it meant to be a performer. He was polished, charismatic, and strategic, always thinking several moves ahead. But Flair's greatness also came with a strong sense of tradition and respect. Backstage, he expected wrestlers to understand the unwritten rules of the business, to show deference to veterans, honor the hierarchy, and approach wrestling as a craft that demanded discipline and respect. For Flair, wrestling wasn't just about flashy moves or loud entrances. It was about psychology, pacing, and connecting with the audience on a deeper level. Enter the Ultimate Warrior, a man whose entire persona was built on raw energy, wild unpredictability, and emotional intensity. At his peak, Warrior was a force of nature, a whirlwind who didn't seem to follow any playbook, but instead burst onto the scene with primal passion and a near otherworldly presence. Where Flair was calculated and deliberate, Warrior was instinctive and explosive. This fundamental difference shaped not just their in-ring style, but their entire approach to wrestling. Backstage, the tension between them wasn't rooted in petty dislike, but in a profound clash of philosophies. Warrior was known for pushing boundaries and challenging authority. He wanted creative control over his character and storylines, often resisting the influence of management or veteran advice. Flair, with decades of experience, saw this as a lack of respect for the craft and for those who had paved the way. Flair believed in mentorship, tradition, and the slow burn of building a legacy, while Warrior embodied rebellion and immediacy. 2. Bill Goldberg, age 58. The Powerhouse's rise and Warrior's jealousy. Bill Goldberg, at 58, is known as one of wrestling's most dominant forces of the late 1990s and early 2000s. His meteoric rise came with an undefeated streak that captivated audiences and marked him as a near-invincible powerhouse. Goldberg's persona was simple yet effective, a relentless, no-nonsense athlete who demolished opponents with raw strength and intensity. For many fans, he was the embodiment of power and dominance. However, this rapid ascent wasn't received with universal open arms. Among those who reportedly found Goldberg's quick rise frustrating was none other than the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior's career was shaped by a different kind of journey, one marked by dramatic highs, but also steep lows. He lived through the grind of the wrestling world, traveling endlessly, working smaller shows, and building his persona step by step. The old-school mentality valued the slow, sometimes brutal, paying your dues process. In this tradition, a wrestler had to earn every bit of success through hard work, perseverance, and respect for the industry's hierarchy. From Warrior's perspective, Goldberg's swift success felt like skipping those important rites of passage. He saw Goldberg's streak and fast push as bypassing the essential process of growth and respect. To someone like Warrior, who prided himself on raw emotion and deep connection with fans, Goldberg's straightforward powerhouse style seemed almost transactional, effective but lacking the nuance that made wrestling truly compelling. Beyond style, the two also differed in their views on professionalism and commitment. Warrior was known for being intense, not just in the ring, but in his approach to wrestling as a career. He demanded discipline, reliability, and full dedication from himself and his peers. Goldberg, by contrast, took a more selective approach to wrestling, balancing his time between wrestling and other ventures like football and acting. His part-time schedule and less frequent touring were common points of criticism among wrestling purists, including Warrior. This difference wasn't just about logistics, it was about respect. For Warrior, the wrestling business was sacred, something that deserved full devotion. Goldberg's seemingly lighter commitment was interpreted as a lack of passion or seriousness, which further strained their backstage relationship. It wasn't so much personal animosity as it was a philosophical divide about what it meant to be a wrestler. 3. Kane, age 58. The monster behind the mask and Warrior's frustration. Kane, now 58, is undeniably one of professional wrestling's most iconic and enduring figures. Cloaked in mystery and darkness, his masked persona, a towering, monstrous presence, captured the imaginations of millions of fans worldwide. The character Kane portrayed was complex. A supernatural force, a force of destruction, yet also a deeply layered individual within wrestling storylines, with a history steeped in family drama, betrayal, and redemption. Behind the mask, however, Kane is known among his peers as a consummate professional, a reliable, hard-working performer who understands the importance of structure and consistency in a physically demanding industry. This duality between Kane's monstrous on-screen persona and his disciplined backstage work ethic stood in contrast to the Ultimate Warrior's wild and unpredictable nature. Warrior's approach to wrestling was fueled by raw energy and emotion. He was a whirlwind of passion who thrived on breaking conventions and pushing boundaries, often resisting the strict guidelines imposed by wrestling management. His character embodied chaos, rebellion, and intensity that didn't always fit neatly into the corporate mold. Warrior reportedly struggled to fully respect Kane because in many ways, Kane represented the wrestling world that Warrior both loved and fought against. Kane's character was tightly managed by the company, carefully crafted and controlled, a symbol of an era where wrestling was becoming more corporate, more polished, and less spontaneous. While Kane's professionalism meant he adhered to schedules, scripts, and guidelines, Warrior's persona was that of a free spirit, someone who valued the unpredictability and the raw emotional core of wrestling above all else. This philosophical divide created tension, but it wasn't rooted in personal animosity. Instead, it was a clash of ideals. Warrior viewed the increasing control of wrestling by corporate structures as a limitation to creativity and true passion. Kane, by contrast, accepted that structure was necessary for the business to run smoothly and for wrestlers to stay safe and consistent in their performances. To Kane, discipline wasn't a restriction, it was part of professionalism. Warrior's frustration might also have stemmed from a sense of loss. The wrestling world was evolving rapidly, moving away from the rough-and-tumble days of unpredictable characters and spontaneous promos toward a more scripted and controlled entertainment product. Kane's career thrived in this environment, and his success was built on adapting to and embracing this new reality. For Warrior, who had built his legacy on the power of chaos and emotional intensity, Kane's more calculated and measured approach felt like a symbol of what wrestling was losing. 4. Kurt Angle, age 56. Olympic gold versus raw intensity. Kurt Angle, aged 56, is a remarkable figure in the world of wrestling, not only for his in-ring achievements, but for his unique background. As an Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling, Angle brought unparalleled technical skill and athleticism to the WWE. His transition from amateur wrestling to sports entertainment was smooth, marked by a keen sense of professionalism, dedication, and an ability to adapt to the entertainment demands of wrestling without sacrificing his athletic credibility. Angle's reputation backstage is that of a consummate professional. Known for his work ethic, he takes his craft seriously, arriving prepared, learning his matches thoroughly, and maintaining peak physical condition. His style is polished, precise, and calculated. He combines technical mastery with charismatic storytelling, making him one of the best performers of his generation. Kurt Angle represents the modern wrestler who understands that wrestling is both a sport and a business, and he approaches it with a strategic mindset. However, the Ultimate Warrior reportedly found it difficult to fully respect Angle's style and demeanor. Warrior's wrestling philosophy was rooted in raw emotion and untamed intensity. He saw wrestling as a battlefield of the soul, where heart and passion mattered more than technical perfection. For Warrior, the authenticity of a performance came from feeling and emotion rather than rehearsed moves or corporate approval. Angle's polished, corporate-friendly approach seemed too sanitized for Warrior's tastes. He viewed Angle's carefully crafted persona and business-savvy attitude as a step away from the grit and raw energy that defined his own era. Where Angle was precise and calculated, Warrior was spontaneous and fierce. This fundamental difference in how they understood wrestling created a natural tension. It wasn't personal dislike as much as it was a clash of worldviews. Warrior came from a time when wrestlers had to pour every ounce of themselves into the ring, often fighting for recognition and creative control. Angle, representing a newer generation, was part of a system that valued athleticism, marketability, and professionalism, sometimes at the expense of the kind of raw, emotional storytelling Warrior championed. 5. Triple H, age 56. Corporate powerhouse vs. Warrior's anti-establishment spirit. Triple H, at 56, is a figure who embodies the modern WWE in nearly every way. Not only has he enjoyed a storied career as one of wrestling's top performers, but his influence behind the scenes has been even more significant. As an executive and creative leader, Triple H has shaped the direction of WWE, overseeing talent development, storylines, and the company's broader business strategy. His polished in-ring style, technical, methodical, and rehearsed, is a stark contrast to the raw, wild energy that defined the Ultimate Warrior. The backstage relationship between Triple H and Warrior was marked by tension and fundamental differences in philosophy. Warrior was famously anti-establishment, an almost mythic figure who openly criticized WWE's corporate culture and resisted the scripted, controlled nature of modern wrestling. He saw wrestling as an arena for personal expression, raw emotion, and rebellion against authority. His persona wasn't just a character in the ring, but a reflection of his real-life distrust of the powers that be. Triple H, on the other hand, embraced the corporate role fully. He wasn't just a wrestler, but a gatekeeper, responsible for grooming new talent and maintaining WWE's polished product. His approach was calculated and structured, focused on building a sustainable business and brand. While Triple H respected the art of wrestling, he also understood that entertainment had become a business, and success required balance, planning, and professionalism. This clash of ideals played out in subtle and not-so-subtle ways. Warrior's unpredictable nature and refusal to adhere strictly to corporate rules made him a difficult figure backstage, someone who challenged authority and didn't always respect the hierarchy. Triple H's role was to enforce that hierarchy and ensure order, which naturally put them at odds. Their tension wasn't just about personalities, but about wrestling's identity itself. For Warrior, Wrestling was a raw, visceral battle of passion and spirit. A place where wrestlers could be warriors in the truest sense, unchained by corporate constraints. Triple H saw wrestling as an evolving business that required discipline, control, and professionalism to thrive in a changing entertainment landscape. 6. The Rock, age 53. Charisma and commerce collide. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, now 53, is one of the most magnetic personalities wrestling has ever produced. His charisma transcended the wrestling ring, propelling him into mainstream superstardom as a Hollywood icon. The Rock's unique blend of charm, athleticism, and star power broadened wrestling's audience significantly, helping transform WWE into a global entertainment powerhouse. However, the Ultimate Warrior reportedly had a complicated relationship with The Rock backstage, rooted in contrasting views on authenticity and wrestling's purpose. Warrior came from an era where wrestling was less about glitzy showmanship and more about raw intensity, personal storytelling, and connecting on a visceral level with the audience. His performances were fueled by emotion and an untamed spirit that felt real and immediate. The Rock, by contrast, represented the polished, corporate-backed era of wrestling. His character was meticulously crafted, his promos rehearsed to perfection, and his image carefully managed by WWE's marketing machine. While undeniably charismatic and beloved by fans, The Rock's persona was part of a broader entertainment package that emphasized branding, scripted storylines, and cross-media appeal. This difference sometimes led Warrior to view The Rock's style as overly commercialized or lacking the raw authenticity he prized. To Warrior, wrestling wasn't just a business. It was a battlefield for soul and spirit, and he felt that the rise of corporate-driven personas like The Rock's diluted that essence. He saw himself as the last true wild spirit in a world increasingly dominated by polished entertainers. Their backstage dynamic highlights a broader tension within wrestling between old-school grit and new-school spectacle. Both men were incredibly charismatic and drew massive fan support, but they symbolized very different eras and philosophies. Conclusion: the Ultimate Warrior's complex legacy in wrestling's ever-changing landscape. The Ultimate Warrior was one of wrestling's most enigmatic and intense figures. A man who poured every ounce of his soul into his performance and fiercely guarded his vision of what wrestling should be. His clashes with Ric Flair, Bill Goldberg, Kane, Kurt Angle, Triple H, and The Rock reveal much more than personal animosity. They represent a fundamental tension between two worlds within professional wrestling. On one side was the Warrior's raw, untamed spirit, unpredictable, emotional, and rebellious. On the other was a modern, polished, and often corporate-driven approach to the sport, embodied by some of wrestling's most disciplined and strategic performers. Each of these 6 men represents a different facet of wrestling's evolution. Ric Flair, the master storyteller and old-school legend, stood for tradition and respect for the craft. Bill Goldberg's rapid rise challenged the old ways of paying dues, while Kane's steady professionalism clashed with Warrior's disdain for control. Kurt Angle exemplified technical excellence and discipline, contrasting with Warrior's emotional authenticity. Triple H, a corporate powerhouse behind the scenes, symbolized the wrestling business's shift towards structure and branding. Finally, The Rock, with his enormous crossover appeal, highlighted the new era of entertainment-focused wrestling. The friction between Warrior and these figures was less about personal grudges and more about differing philosophies. Warrior fiercely believed in wrestling as a passionate art form fueled by heart and energy, while his counterparts often emphasized professionalism, storytelling craft, and business savvy. This divide created natural tension in an industry constantly balancing its rebellious roots with its role as global entertainment. Ultimately, these tensions helped shape wrestling's history. The Ultimate Warrior's legacy reminds us that wrestling is not just a sport or a show. It's a living, breathing clash of personalities, ideologies, and generations. His battles behind the scenes reflect wrestling's ongoing struggle to honor its past while evolving to captivate new audiences. Through his fire and fury, Warrior left an indelible mark that continues to inspire both admiration and debate among fans and peers alike. Your one click can help us keep creating awesome stuff.